The sign flickered like it was gasping for air. Rest Easy Motel, vacancy, it read in peeling red letters. The last Y blinked in and out like a dying heartbeat. I sat in my car for a minute, staring at it through a bug-smeared windshield, wondering, for the 100th time, why I'd said yes to this job. But I already knew why. I had $32 to my name, a busted transmission, and no place else to go. The ad was short and strange. Night clerk wanted. No experience necessary. Cash daily. Room included. No phone number. Just an address scribbled in blue pen on a bulletin board at a rundown gas station outside Elko, Nevada. That should have been a red flag. But desperation makes you see opportunity where there's only warning. The motel sat off a crumbling service road, surrounded by empty desert and old telephone poles that looked like they'd given up standing straight. I stepped out into the dry night air, gravel crunching under my boots. The sky was a smear of stars. No sound, no wind, just stillness. The kind that makes you feel like you're already trespassing. The front office was locked. I knocked once, then again harder. Just as I turned to leave, the door opened with a long, aching creak. The man standing there looked like he hadn't blinked in years. Gaunt, gray-skinned, and sunken-eyed. His name tag read Morris in faded gold thread. He didn't speak, just sized me up with a kind of tired recognition, then motioned me inside with one crooked finger. The air smelled like mothballs and something metallic, rust or blood, maybe both. A thick binder sat on the front desk next to a ring of antique keys, the kind with teeth like a skeleton's grin. "You're the new night guy?" Morris finally asked, voice rough like gravel being dragged across a chalkboard. I nodded. He didn't ask for ID, didn't ask if I had any questions. "Your shift starts at midnight, ends at 6. Don't leave the front desk unless there's an emergency. Room 6 is yours. Guests mostly keep to themselves." He slid the binder toward me. "This is for them," he said. "Make sure every new guest gets a copy." I opened the binder. The cover read, "Rules for Staying Alive, Guest Protocols." I let out a dry laugh, assuming it was some kind of gimmick, but Morris wasn't smiling. I flipped through it. Each page was typed out in courier font. Every guest had their own page, their own set of rules. Room 1. Do not let anyone knock twice. Open only on the third knock. Room 3. Never give the guest a wake-up call. Ever. Room 5. Leave fresh ice outside the door at 2:17 a.m., even if no one checked in. Room 7. If they ask you for directions, lie. They already know the way. Room 10. Do not assign this room, even if you're out of space. "What is this?" I asked, my voice dry. He stared at me for a long moment. "You follow them," he said, "or you clean up what's left." He handed me a ring of keys, actual iron keys, not plastic cards, and pointed down the hall. "Get some rest. You'll need it." I didn't argue. My legs were shaking. Room 6 was musty and threadbare. A tiny lamp flickered when I turned it on. The bed sagged like it had secrets. I sat on the edge and stared at the guest rule binder until my eyes burned. The whole thing had to be some elaborate joke. Maybe Morris was senile. Maybe this was all just theater to freak out the new guy. I told myself that as I laid back and tried to sleep. At exactly 11:57 p.m., the phone beside my bed rang once and stopped. I didn't answer it. I didn't move. 3 minutes later, Morris knocked twice on the door. Only twice. I waited, then a third knock. "Front desk," he called, flat and cold. I opened the door. He handed me a notepad, a pen, and a flashlight. "No one checks in tonight," he said, "but room 5 still expects the ice." He walked away without another word. I stood there in the dim hallway, shivering in the desert heat. The silence was thick, almost liquid, and then I remembered. Room 5 was supposed to be empty, but it had a rule, and someone, or something, inside still expected it to be followed. The ice machine was older than I was. Tucked between the vending machines on the far side of the lot, it wheezed like it was dying with every cube it dropped. The bucket Morris had given me rattled with uneven chunks as I made my way back to the main building, flashlight beam bouncing across cracked pavement. The air felt different. Still dry, still hot, but heavier somehow, like it was pressing down on me. The kind of weight that doesn't come from weather. More like the motel itself was exhaling, letting me know it had noticed me. I reached room 5 at exactly 2:16 a.m. Its door looked no different from the others. Faded beige paint, tarnished brass handle. But the air around it was cold, freezing even. My skin prickled. I crouched down and gently placed the bucket of ice in front of the door, careful not to spill any. My watch ticked over to 2:17. That's when I heard it. A faint shuffle inside the room, like feet dragging across carpet. Then, closer now, the sound of someone inhaling. Not like breathing, not really, more like sniffing. I froze, hands still on the bucket. Then, soft and deliberate, something knocked back. 3 slow taps directly on the other side of the door. Not a request, a response. I stood there, heart thudding in my chest, staring at the worn brass numbers. I wanted to run, but some part of me, some deep, dangerous part, needed to know. "Hello?" I whispered, instantly regretting it. Silence. Then, as if reacting to my voice, the door creaked. Just slightly. Not open, but like it had shifted under pressure. I backed away. Fast. The flashlight flickered in my hand as I returned to the front desk, and when I reached it, I slammed the lobby door shut behind me. The old bell on the counter jingled from the vibration. Morris wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. I sat behind the desk, trying to slow my breathing. The rule had been clear. Leave ice outside room 5 at 2:17 a.m., even if no one checked in. I had done it. I followed it to the second. But the room wasn't empty. I was sure of it now. I turned on the desk lamp and opened the binder again. Page after page of strange guest protocols, each one more unnerving than the last. Some had little handwritten notes scrawled in the margins. Room 3, watch the mirrors, or Room 8, never go in during a storm. Then I saw it. Room 5. At the bottom of the page, in shaky pencil, if the ice melts too quickly, don't knock. Leave. Immediately. I glanced at the bucket Morris had given me. A backup, in case the machine jammed. It was still half full and sitting by my chair. I reached down. The ice was gone. Not melted. Gone. The bottom of the bucket was dry. No water, no trace. I stared at it, my hands trembling. I couldn't make sense of it. Had I just imagined scooping the ice? Number. I remembered the noise, the cold against my skin, the way it clinked, and the door, the knock that hadn't come from me. I checked the security monitor behind the desk. Grainy, black and white footage of the motel exterior. Static buzzed in the corner. The camera pointed at room 5 was hazy, blurry, like the lens had been fogged over. I leaned closer, adjusted the contrast knob. There, movement, a tall, thin shape stepping into the frame, just barely visible through the interference. It stopped in front of room 6. My room. I pushed back from the desk, heart slamming into my ribs. The figure just stood there, not knocking, not pacing, just standing, head tilted slightly toward the door, watching me. I grabbed the motel phone and dialed room 6. The call rang twice, then clicked. Static, and under the static, breathing. Deep, low, deliberate. I hung up. Then, slowly, the figure turned and walked back down the hall, disappearing into the blur near room 5. I stayed behind the desk until the sun started to rise, sitting frozen, barely blinking. When Morris returned around 6:05 a.m., I was still holding the empty bucket. He glanced at me, didn't ask what happened, just said, "Did you deliver the ice?" I nodded, slowly. "Good," he muttered, walking past me into the office. I wanted to ask what was in that room, who, or what, still stayed there, but I knew he wouldn't answer. Instead, I looked down at the guest log on the desk. Room 5 hadn't been checked out in over a decade, but every night, someone still followed the rules. The next night, I showed up 10 minutes early. Morris didn't say a word when I walked into the lobby, just handed me the keys, gave a slow, tired nod, and disappeared into the back office like he always did. There was a thermos of black coffee waiting on the counter. No note, but it felt like a silent acknowledgement. I took it. I didn't ask. The sun was dipping below the horizon as I sat behind the desk and opened the guest protocol binder again. After last night, I needed answers, or at least patterns. The book was yellowed, brittle in places, and bound with metal rings that groaned when I turned the pages. Every rule had a rhythm to it, a structure, like they weren't just arbitrary commands, but parts of some larger, older design. That's when I noticed it. Several rooms had small red dots in the upper corners of their pages, not printed, drawn with red ink or maybe wax pencil, and each of those rooms had more severe warnings. Room 2, never return anything they leave behind. Room 5, leave fresh ice at 2:17 a.m., even if it's empty. Room 7, if they ask for directions, lie. They already know the way. Red dots meant danger. I flipped to room 7's entry again, my pulse rising. The note was specific. They will always ask, always, underlined twice. The guest in room 7 had checked in earlier that day, according to the logbook. Mr. Glenton, W. No phone number, no ID, just a signature and a $100 bill. At 1:10 a.m., the front desk bell rang. I jumped. It echoed like a scream in the quiet lobby. I stood, heart pounding. Someone stood outside the glass front door. Tall, mid-50s, wearing a green raincoat, despite the fact that we were in the middle of the desert and it hadn't rained in weeks. He stepped inside slowly, eyes scanning the room like he was checking for exits rather than checking in. "You're the new clerk," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. He looked at the coffee on the desk, then at me. "Have you read my page yet?" I hesitated. "You mean the rules?" He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I always ask," he said. "That's part of it." I swallowed hard, suddenly unsure if this man had read the binder or was part of it. "Could you remind me where the vending machines are?" he asked casually, but his eyes never left mine. My mouth went dry. I wanted to tell the truth. It was instinct, basic politeness. Left at the end of the hall, outside near the ice machine. But the rule echoed in my brain. If they ask for directions, lie. I cleared my throat. "Past the laundry room," I said. "Down the stairs." He didn't blink. "There are no stairs." "I know," I said quickly, "but they sometimes appear." His stare lingered for a second too long. Then he nodded. "Good," he said softly. "You're learning." He turned and walked back down the hall toward room 7. Didn't say goodnight, didn't glance back. I collapsed into the chair, sweat running cold down my spine. My hands trembled as I turned the page in the binder. At the bottom of Room 7's entry, in smaller text than the rest, someone had scribbled a note. "He'll come back if you tell the truth. And this time, he won't be asking." I sat there until the clock read 2 a.m., staring at the hallway, waiting for something, anything to happen. But no footsteps, no knocks, no voices, just silence, and the soft hum of something I couldn't see. Then the phone rang. Not my cell, not the motel line. The phone behind me, the one built into the wall. No number on the display, just a blinking red light. I picked it up slowly. A whisper on the line. Faint, male, familiar. "Where do I go next?" the voice rasped. "Which direction?" I didn't answer. Not this time. The voice grew sharper, more impatient. I asked nicely. I hung up. The lights flickered once, then held steady. At sunrise, Morris walked in like clockwork. Same routine, same unspoken nod. He glanced at me longer than usual. "Room 7 still there?" he asked. I opened the logbook. Glenton's entry was gone. The page was blank. I looked up. Morris just sipped his coffee. "That happens sometimes," he said, and left it at that. The longer I worked at the motel, the more it began to feel like time wasn't moving forward. Each shift bled into the next. Rules stacked on top of rules until I couldn't remember which ones applied to guests and which ones were silently applying to me. Some nights, I barely moved from behind the front desk. Other nights, I found myself wandering the hallways, drawn by flickers of light or sounds that didn't belong to this world. By the fourth night, I'd memorized the binder like it was scripture. And still, new pages appeared. Room 9 hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. But sometime between the end of my last shift and the start of this one, its page was tucked neatly between 8 and 10. No red dot, just the header in bold. "Rules for Room 9, do not let them leave without saying goodbye." That was it. One rule. I flipped through the guest log. Room 9 had a name scribbled in faint ink. Mina Caldwell. No address, no ID, just a signature that looped oddly at the end, like someone was pulling the pen away mid-stroke. I didn't remember checking her in. At 12:42 a.m., the bell above the front door chimed. Mina stood there, wrapped in a shawl that fluttered despite the dead air. Her skin was pale, almost gray in the flickering lobby light, and her eyes were too wide, like someone who hadn't blinked in days. "Leaving early?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She smiled faintly. "Yes, I have somewhere to be." I checked the rule again. Do not let them leave without saying goodbye. I hesitated. "Would you like to check out officially? The paperwork, I mean." Her eyes narrowed. "No need. I'm already gone." That sentence stuck in my brain like a splinter. I'm already gone. She reached for the handle. Her fingers didn't seem to cast a shadow. "Mina," I blurted, voice cracking. "Goodbye." She froze, turned, and smiled again, this time fuller, sadder, like she'd been waiting for someone to say it. "Thank you," she whispered. "Most don't remember." Then she opened the door and walked out into the desert night. I watched through the glass, but instead of heading for the parking lot, she veered left, toward the edge of the lot where the asphalt crumbled into dry grass. And then she vanished. Not walked out of view, vanished, like fog burning off under sunlight. The second she disappeared, the motel lights flickered violently. Somewhere down the hallway, a door slammed shut. I flipped to Room 9's page again. The handwriting had changed. It was no longer typed. It was scrawled, panicked. A second rule had appeared beneath the first. If you forget to say goodbye, they will come back for it, even if it's years later. I stared at it for a long time. Then I flipped to the guest log and found something else. At the very bottom of the page where Mina's name had been, another scribble had appeared. You said it just in time. The phone behind the desk rang. Not the wall phone this time. My cell. Unknown number. I let it ring. The voicemail icon appeared. I played the message on speaker. No voice, just faint static and then a whisper. Female. Software like it was spoken directly into my ear. Thank you. I powered off the phone and locked it in the desk drawer. I didn't want to know what would have happened if I hadn't said it. For the rest of the shift, I kept thinking about the second part of that new rule. They will come back for it, even if it's years later. How many people had forgotten? How many were still walking around, never realizing they'd left something unfinished until it came knocking? At 3 a.m., I checked the monitor for room 9. The door was open. The room was dark. Inside, something small glinted from the nightstand. A single brass key with a folded note beside it. I zoomed in on the camera. The note read, in careful cursive, "Don't forget the next one." By morning, room 9's page had vanished again from the binder. So had her signature from the log. When Morris arrived, he glanced at me and said, "You remembered, didn't you?" I nodded. He gave a small, approving grunt. "Then she's at peace." I didn't ask how he knew. He always knew. But something in his voice told me we wouldn't be that lucky next time. The guest book had been clear from day one. Room 10. Do not assign this room, even if you're out of space. That rule wasn't like the others. There were no timestamps, no delivery rituals or coded warnings, just a flat directive. It was the one page in the binder that looked newer than the rest, like someone had replaced it recently. At the bottom in red ink was a final note. It doesn't like to be disturbed twice. That always stuck with me. Twice. So, when the couple walked in around 1:40 a.m., tired and dusty from the road, I should have turned them away. I should have said we were full, even if half the rooms were empty. But I hesitated. They looked normal, mid-30s, polite, the kind of people who smiled too much and didn't ask for much, said they were coming back from a wedding upstate and just needed a place to crash for a few hours. Every room with a page in the binder was already taken that night, except 10. "We'll be gone by morning," the man said, checking his phone. "Don't even need towels." The woman added with a tired smile, "Honestly, any room with a bed works." I stared at the key for room 10 on the hook behind me. It had a thick red tag that said, "Do not use," but the hook itself was rusted from years of hanging untouched. One time, I thought. One time couldn't hurt. I handed it over. The woman's fingers brushed mine as she took it. Cold. Too cold. But I blamed the air conditioning that hadn't worked in weeks. "Thank you," she said softly. "We'll keep quiet." They didn't sign the guest log. I didn't ask. As soon as the door to room 10 clicked shut behind them, the motel changed. I don't know how to describe it except to say that the air felt thinner, like something had been pulled back. The desert outside went silent. No wind, no buzz of insects. Even the lights inside the lobby dimmed slightly, not flickering, just retreating. I grabbed the binder and flipped to room 10's page again. The ink at the bottom had smeared, as if someone had just written it. "If the door opens after 3 a.m., do not look inside." I checked the clock. 2:46 a.m. I stood behind the desk, gripping the counter, trying to breathe through the pressure building in my chest. I kept thinking about that line. It doesn't like to be disturbed twice. Has someone else made the same mistake before me? At 3:04 a.m., the front lobby door opened by itself. I didn't move, and then, down the hallway, I heard it. Room 10's door. Click. Then a slow creak as it opened. I told myself not to go. Told myself the rule was clear. But my legs moved anyway, like I was being pulled forward. Like the motel had decided I needed to see. The hallway lights had dimmed to the color of old bone. The carpet felt damp. I could hear something dragging behind that open door, like someone shifting across linoleum in bare feet. I reached the end of the hall and stopped just short of room 10. The door was open. The room was dark. And then I heard it. A voice, female, whispering softly. We said we'd only need a few hours. I leaned forward. The woman from earlier stood in the center of the room, except, no, not standing, floating. Her feet dangled inches above the ground, her body twitching in unnatural pulses like a glitch in a broken film reel. Her eyes were wide, mouth frozen in a smile that stretched too far. Her arms hung loosely at her sides like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The man stood behind her, hands on her shoulders, but his face, number. He didn't have one, just smooth, pale skin from forehead to chin, as if someone had pressed a sheet of wax over where features should have been. I stumbled back. She turned, more twisted, toward me. "We're disturbing you, aren't we?" she rasped. "So rude of us. We thought it was our turn." Then they both stepped forward. I ran, sprinted back down the hallway to the front desk and slammed the door shut behind me. I turned the lobby lights up full, locked the deadbolt. The monitor flickered. Room 10 was closed again. Just a door, just a room. By morning, the key was back on the hook. Red tag still intact. No tire marks in the lot. No logbook entry. No names, no smiles. Just a note in the binder beneath Room 10's rule, scrawled in a jagged, unfamiliar hand. That was the second time. I didn't sleep after that night, not even after my shift ended and the sun dragged its pale fingers across the desert. I sat in room 6, curtains drawn, staring at the red-tagged key now sitting back on its hook, as if none of it had happened. Except I knew better. The motel remembered, and so did I. By nightfall, something in the air had changed. It wasn't just the usual silence or the weighted stillness that settled over the building after midnight. It was the sense that something was watching. Not from a window, not from a room, from inside the rules themselves. I clocked in early again, but Morris wasn't there this time. His usual thermos of coffee was gone. So was the chair he usually left tucked behind the desk. I called out for him. Nothing. In his place, someone had left a folded envelope on the counter, my name written across the front in trembling ink. Inside was a single page. Not motel letterhead, not typed. One final rule, only for you. When the phone rings 3 times, you have one choice. Answer it and stay forever, or walk away and forget everything. You cannot do both. There was no signature, just a time written at the bottom, 3:33 a.m. That number again. It had followed me since the first night. The ice bucket, the whisper on the motel line, the pocket watch and the cemetery story I once read online. I stared at the phone on the wall behind the desk. Black, unremarkable, but now it felt like a countdown. The binder sat beside it. Its pages were fluttering gently even though there was no draft. I reached out to close it and realized something terrifying. My name was on the last page. Room 6, Daniel. That was my name. I hadn't written it, no one had. But there it was, in blocky courier font like the others. Below it, 1. Stay inside the room during your shift. 2. Do not speak to the man in the mirror. 3. When the phone rings at 3:33, choose. I turned cold. I stepped into the restroom off the lobby and flicked the light on. The mirror above the sink was smudged with something that looked like dust or maybe ash. I wiped it with my sleeve. My reflection blinked at me. I hadn't. I stepped back, but the reflection stayed. Still staring, still smirking. He lifted his hand slowly and with a single finger tapped once against the glass. Tap. The sound didn't echo in the room. It echoed inside my head. I turned the lights off and shut the door. Back at the desk, the second hand on the wall clock jerked forward. 3:32 a.m. I stood. I thought about running. Out the door, into the desert, away from this place and everything inside it. But I couldn't move. My feet felt anchored. My lungs refused to fill all the way. This place doesn't just trap people, I realized. It recruits them. The phone rang. Once, I stared at it. Twice, my heart was hammered. 3 times. Silence. The motel held its breath. So did I. I reached for the phone, hand trembling, fingers brushing the receiver. The lights flickered. And then the door behind me, the one to the office Morris always vanished through, creaked open on its own. Inside was nothing but a hallway, one I'd never seen before, lined with old wallpaper, lit by a single flickering bulb. At the end was a mirror, and in the mirror, my reflection stood waiting, smiling, holding the phone to his ear. "Choose," he mouthed. I let the phone ring. I turned away. I walked out of the front doors, into the cold desert night, past the flickering sign that now read, "Rest easy, no vacancy." And when I looked back, the motel was gone. No structure, no lot, just flat sand and empty sky. I don't remember how I got home, only that I woke up in my old bed, binder gone, uniform folded neatly at the foot of the bed. No sign I had ever left. But sometimes, around 3:33 a.m., the phone rings, just once, then twice, then 3 times. I never answer. But I wonder, what would have happened if I had? What happens to those who stay? Because some nights, in the mirror above my bathroom sink, I see a man in a dusty motel uniform, and he's still waiting for me to finish my shift.